Hi, everyone. So I'm Laure Menant, consultant in strategy and innovation, and part of my job is to help companies be more successful. And today, I want to explain to you why I believe that women should be paid more for businesses to actually achieve greater success. Now, some of you seem a bit surprised at the front row, but I'm not being sexist or whatever, just bear with me, and I'll tell you why this is an interesting strategy. So basically, this theory started at a moment. Actually a day in my professional life. At the time, I had about 3 years of experience, and I had been working on this very strategic project for 6 months with a young intern and my boss, who was about in his mid-50s. And we have the final presentation in front of the CODIR, and so we arrive in this big, clinical, gray room, and where you have 15 men. Yeah. And so we arrive, start preparing everything for the presentation, and then one of those men comes to me and says, "Oh, I guess you're going to be our wonderful assistant today. Please make coffee for everyone." I was quite surprised, and I looked at my intern, and he was so stressed making last modifications. He was too concentrated to be part of this conversation. And then I looked at my boss, and obviously he wasn't against having a coffee. So I turned to this man, and you know what I said? You know what I said? I said, "Sure, with milk and sugar. Of course." Now, what's interesting in this story, there's two things. First, it's what I call a gender cognitive bias. A cognitive bias is the way a particular person understands and sees the world based on a set of knowledge, but sometimes on stereotypes. In this very specific case, it was a gender stereotype. Now, what's also interesting, it's my own reaction. The fact that I was fully complicit of this bias. I even nourished it. And this is what I call the double equation problem. Both stakeholders are maintaining the situation. But here, nothing new, right? You all know about this already, I'm sure. You've heard this before. If you've heard about that before, please raise your hand. Okay, good. About half, a bit more than half of the room. For the rest, come on, 2020, catch up. Now, I'm sorry, not putting pressure on anyone, but it's true that it's a problem that actually a lot of companies already are taking into account. They have specific programs for women, and on the other hand, you also have women leading the change, like Sheryl Sandberg. That's pushing all the women to lean in and to remove the barriers that they're putting on themselves. Despite all this effort, it could all be undone, if not made worse, because of one new reality: algorithms. Algorithms are part of our everyday life, and without even noticing it, sometimes you do notice it, but it's part of your decision-making process. Just one interesting data, algorithms influence 33% of your decision on Amazon and 80% on Netflix. Now the thing is, data are just what they eat. Algorithms are just what they eat. And what do they eat? They eat data. And if your data is biased, your algorithm is biased. Let me give you an example. You all know Amazon, right? Well, actually, they're making a lot of efforts to encourage greater diversity. And not that long ago, they had developed this algorithm to allow an automatic recruiting process selecting different CVs. And just after a few months of use of this algorithm, they realized that most of the CVs that were selected were male CVs. So they looked further into the algorithm to understand, and they realized that all of the data that had been put in this algorithm was based on 10 years of data, during which you mainly had male CVs. Now, what's interesting in this is that not only algorithm can bring biases from the past, but they can also replicate those biases such that they become much bigger than us. And now I'm really talking to you as business leaders. Imagine if in your own business, an algorithm, which sometimes can be a real strategic asset, is biased, you could potentially miss a large part of your potential customers. That leads us to one interesting conclusion. It's not just about ethics. It's also a business issue. And there is one main solution that you can get to this business issue, which is biased algorithm. It's by having greater diversity in your tech team, right? But then again, problem's not solved because you don't have that many women in tech. 26% only is the share of women in the tech teams, and you have 12.6 which have decision-making position. Now, if you turn to your HR and you say, oh, we need much more women in our team, most of them will say, well, the problem is that we don't have any women applying for those jobs. Well, then it gets us to one of the most basic economic model of supply and demand. If you're lacking of a resource, the price becomes higher. This is why I believe that women should be paid more than men to ensure the success of your business. Now, I know this is quite bold and might be difficult to put in place, but it's, in this new era of algorithm, it's probably a very powerful tool to think about. Thank you.